The bus stop was nearly empty that night, wrapped in silence except for the distant hum of traffic and the cold wind slicing through the air. Streetlights flickered like tired eyes, and winter seemed determined to seep into every bone. A man in a worn brown jacket stood there, hands deep in his pockets, waiting for a bus that always came late. He noticed her then, a woman standing a few steps away, hugging herself tightly, her shoulders trembling not from fear but from the cold. She wore a simple dress, far too light for the weather, and though she tried to appear composed, her lips were turning pale. He hesitated, glancing at his own thin jacket, the only thing keeping him warm that night. He wasn't rich. In fact, he counted every coin before boarding a bus. His shoes were scuffed, his phone outdated, and his life consisted of long workdays and quiet nights. Still, something about the way she shivered stirred a familiar ache in his chest, the memory of winters when kindness had saved him. He stepped closer, unsure if she would even accept help from a stranger like him. She looked up, startled, her eyes sharp yet tired, carrying a depth that hinted at a life far more complex than it appeared. Without saying much, he shrugged off his jacket and gently held it out to her. "It's cold," he said simply, his voice calm but sincere. She stared at the jacket as if it were something sacred, not because of its value but because of the gesture behind it. "I'll be fine," she tried to protest, though her teeth betrayed her words with a soft shiver. He smiled faintly. "So will I," he replied, even though he knew it wasn't true. She finally accepted, draping the jacket over her shoulders. It was warm, not just physically, but emotionally. No one had done something so simple and selfless for her in years. As the fabric settled around her, she felt an unfamiliar tightness in her throat. She thanked him quietly, her voice barely audible over the wind. He nodded and stepped back, rubbing his hands together, pretending not to notice how the cold bit deeper into his skin. They stood there in silence, two strangers connected by a moment neither would forget. He had no idea who she really was, and she had no intention of revealing it. To him, she was just someone who needed warmth. To her, he was a reminder of a world she had long drifted away from. The bus was late, but time seemed suspended, as if the universe wanted them to remain there just a little longer. When the bus finally arrived, its headlights cutting through the darkness, she hesitated before boarding. She turned to him and asked his name. He told her, slightly embarrassed, as if his name carried no importance. She repeated it softly, committing it to memory. Then she stepped onto the bus, still wearing his jacket, and found a seat by the window. As the bus pulled away, she watched him grow smaller in the distance, standing there with nothing but his kindness to keep him warm. The next morning, she sat in a high-rise office overlooking the city. The same woman now wore a tailored suit, her posture commanding, her presence undeniable. She was the CEO of a multinational company, a position earned through years of sacrifice and solitude. The jacket lay folded neatly on her desk. She ran her fingers over the worn fabric, her mind replaying the moment at the bus stop again and again. In meetings that day, numbers were discussed, contracts reviewed, profits projected. Yet her thoughts drifted elsewhere. She wondered about the man who gave her his only jacket without expecting anything in return. In a world where everyone wanted something from her, he wanted nothing. That realization unsettled her more than any business challenge ever had. She asked her assistant to locate him, not to reward him publicly, not to make a show, but simply to return what he had given her, along with something more meaningful. Using only a name and a bus route, it took days, but eventually, they found him. He worked at a small warehouse, earning just enough to survive, never imagining his simple act would ripple beyond that cold night. When he was called into an office and saw her standing there, he didn't recognize her at first. She looked different, confident, powerful, surrounded by an aura of authority. Then she smiled, the same soft smile from the bus stop, and held out the jacket. His eyes widened in disbelief. "You forgot this," she said gently. They talked for hours. She listened to his story, his struggles, his quiet dreams. No pity filled her eyes, only respect. She realized that success had never taught her what kindness had, that true wealth wasn't measured in money, but in moments where you choose humanity over comfort. She offered him help, not as charity, but as opportunity. Training, education, a position within her company if he wanted it. He hesitated, overwhelmed, but she reassured him. "This isn't repayment," she said. "It's gratitude." He accepted, not because of the offer, but because of the sincerity behind it. His life began to change slowly, honestly. He worked hard, just as he always had, but now his efforts were seen, valued, and rewarded. Months later, he stood at another bus stop, this time wearing a new coat. A shivering elderly man stood nearby, struggling against the cold. Without hesitation, he removed his coat and placed it over the man's shoulders, smiling as he once had. Across the street, the CEO watched quietly from her car. She didn't intervene. She didn't need to. She knew kindness had completed its circle. She realized then that the jacket had never been the real gift. It was the reminder that compassion still existed, even in the harshest conditions. The world often celebrates power, wealth, and status. But it rarely pauses to honor small acts of goodness that change lives in unseen ways. That cold night at the bus stop became a story she carried with her, a story of humility, empathy, and unexpected connection. And for him, it was proof that doing the right thing, even when it costs you, can open doors you never knew existed. Because sometimes, the warmth you give away comes back to you in ways far greater than you ever imagined.